Alright guys, I'm back for part 2. I am gonna go ahead and do the Photoshop edit. This is the photo that I took right out of Lightroom. I've just now opened it up into Photoshop. As far as if I'm talking about keys on my keyboard, I am a PC user. I am not a Mac user. So I believe if I say Control I for a shortcut key, it's probably Command I, I'm guessing, on a Mac, but I'm not sure. I've never used a Mac, so kind of bear with me there, but I will just, all shortcut keys will be referenced in the PC language. So the first thing that I would do with this photo is I would zoom in on it. Those hairs up here at the top of her head are pretty distracting to me. Normally I'm not somebody who is really gonna do a lot of edits as far as removing rogue hairs, but these are going to be pretty simple and easy to get rid of, and they do bother me. So I feel like your eye should always go right to her face usually and kind of stay there for a little while, but my eye keeps wanting to go up towards these hairs, so I'm going to get rid of them. It's super easy. I am just going to use my spot healing brush right here, and then if you use the right bracket key you can make it bigger, and if you use the left bracket key you can make it smaller. And then I'm just going to come in here and color right over the top of those hairs, and Photoshop is going to do its awesome magic and just get rid of them for me. Photoshop is pretty good at this. I will say they've gotten better over the years. The first Photoshop I had was not nearly as good as it is now. I think it was like Photoshop 4 or 5. I don't remember. Anyway, it was a few Photoshops ago. I'm just gonna kind of erase some of those. I don't need to get too crazy here. That's pretty good. And then there's one over here. Let's get rid of that sucker. Alright, so I'm not going to worry about any of these over her eye. Those are not super distracting to me. They don't even bother me. So I'm going to hit Control 0 to zoom back out. The next thing I'm going to do is to crop this just a little bit. So just a word to the wise when you're cropping things. Always keep in mind what your client's going to do with the photo, or what they may do with the photo, or if you are in-person sales and you actually do prints for your clients. Save yourself a lot of headache and maybe don't crop your image, because if they were to go and order like a gallery wrap canvas, you're going to lose this whole chunk because this part of the image is going to wrap around the frame. So you want to kind of leave some room as far as printing goes. And then if they were to print this in a 4x6, it would be fine, or a 12x18. But if they wanted to print it in an 8x10, you're going to lose stuff off the sides here. So always keep that in mind, and you're better safe to just not even crop it at all and just leave it like it is, unless there's a lot on the sides, or if you don't really care, then it's up to you what you want to do. But just for the sake of this image, I'm gonna crop it just a little bit. I feel like that up at the top takes away a little bit, but normally if this was a regular client, I might not do that, just because if they wanted to order a canvas, I'm going to kick myself later because then I'm going to have to go in and add stuff at the top. So keep that in mind. Alright, so I have this action palette here. This is pretty much the actions I edit with, so I'm going to bundle this for you guys along with the preset I used on this, and then I'm going to give you a black and white preset as well, one of my favorites, just as a bundle if you're interested in the exact tools that I'm using to edit this photo. Okay, so the first thing I would do after I kind of clean up her rogue hairs, she didn't really have any blemishes either that I really needed to worry about, so yay. That makes our job a little bit easier. I would want to add a little bit more light. The time of the day we took this was a little bit later in the day. The sun was out, but it was kind of covered by clouds, so I kind of want to add a little bit more light. So I'm going to click this light leak here, and it just put it right up in the corner where I don't want it. I kind of want to move it. So in order to move it, you're going to double click right here, right next to this layer mask. a box is going to pop up, but just ignore that. And then you can drag it wherever you want it to be. If you like it there, cool. If you like it here, awesome. I'm going to just put it right above her head. And then I'm going to hit OK. And then if it's too strong for you, you can lower the opacity. If you want it brighter, you can up the opacity. It is totally up to you. And then if you click on this layer mask right here and you get a black paintbrush, you can see that it's on her face, and we don't want it on her face. We want it just behind her. So I'm going to paint it off of her. And then it kind of gets tricky to see if you've painted it off of her, if there's any left still on there. So if you click the key right next to the right bracket tool, it's the one with the up and down line or the backslash. If you click that, it will show you in red everywhere you've painted. So I still need to paint here just to make sure I'm getting it off of her face and off of her hood for the most part. There we go. All right, so that's what it looks like without it. That's what it looks like with it. You, the artist, can decide if you like that. I think it adds a little bit, so I'm going to leave it just like that. And then I'm going to flatten it. So layer, flatten image. All right. The next thing that I'm going to do is brighten up her face just a little bit and run a couple actions. So I want to brighten up this whole image, so I'm going to use this brightness boost, and it brightened her up just a little bit. And I'm going to pair it with another action that I like, so I'm not going to flatten yet. I'm going to come down and click on the background, and then I'm going to run soft pop, and it's going to actually do a big pop. But if you run it, you can lower the opacity. So it did a little bit of a big pop to her. I am going to lower the opacity just a little bit. So before that, I'm definitely somebody who likes contrast photos. I'm not a light and airy shooter, although I might edit this a little bit more light and airy just because of the winter look I'm going for, but I definitely like the darks to be in there. So I ran that soft pop, and it just kind of added a little bit on the sides. I feel like there's a little bit too much darkness on the sides. I might brush some of that off. So you can click on this mask here and get a black brush, and I'm going to put it at 50% opacity, and if I click 5 on my keyboard, it's automatically going to change my opacity up here to 5, and then I'm just going to paint some of it off on the sides here. So that's with it, and then that's my mid-tone boost. And then the last thing I'm going to do is click back on that background, and then I'm going to put a soft center spotlight just right on her to really make her a lot brighter than the background. So you can see what that did. It's going to put it right in the center of the image, and you can move it around. It's kind of hard to see where it's at, but if you double click on it, you can move it just like you did the light leak. So you can, it's hard to see. You can kind of see it over here, but I'm going to put it just right on her face and click OK. And then you can see it just really brightened her up right in the middle. But I'm going to lower that just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to group all these together so you guys can see what it looked like before I ran all these and now what it looks like with them applied. So if you click that one, and then I hold down Control and click Soft Pop and then Mid-Tone Boost, and then I'm going to drag them down to this folder. It's going to group them. So then I can turn it off and on. So before I ran those actions, this is what it looked like, and then after. And then if it's a little bit too much for you, you can lower the opacity on all of them to kind of find a sweet spot that you like. So I like that. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to do layer flatten. And then one other thing that we have going on here is just because of the hood and the time of the day, she kind of has some dark areas underneath of her eyes, and I really want to brighten those up. So if you come up here to the clone stamp tool and you click that, and then I always want my opacity to be either 30 or 40%, so I'm going to click 4 I'm just going to hit the number 4 on my keyboard. And then for my flow, I'm going to do Shift 4 and it's going to automatically change it to 40%. And then the way that the clone tool works is it's going to, wherever you tell it to sample from, it's going to use that as the good part and then it's going to fix the bad part. So underneath of her eye is bright and I want to use that. So I'm going to hit the Alt key and then click. And so now it's going to pull from that good part and just brighten up underneath of her eyes. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, Alt, click, and then it's just going to brighten up underneath of her eyes just a little bit. So I'll show you before we did that, it looked like that, and now it looks like that. So I didn't really take away the creases or the lines underneath of her eyes, I just brightened it a little bit. And then I'm going to hit Control-0 to zoom back out at 100%. So it looks like that, and now it looks like this. Oh, make sure you save often. I have had Photoshop crash in the middle of an edit, and then I get super mad at myself for not saving. So I'm going to do a file save as, and I'm just going to save this to the desktop for easy referencing. Usually I save it to a client folder, but just for this image, I'm going to save it to the desktop. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my actions. This soft light sun, I'm going to go ahead and run that. So we ran that light leak action, but I want to put a little bit of warmth on it so it mimics the sun a little bit. So I'm going to hit play on that. And then I am going to get a brush and then I'm going to put it at 20% opacity and I'm just going to paint where I want a little bit of that warm color to be coming through. But the problem is, see how it painted over top of her, and I don't want her to have that effect on her. So I'm going to click on that layer, and then I'm going to add a layer mask here, and it's white. So I'm going to grab a brush and make sure it's black, and I want it to be at 100% opacity, and I'm going to paint it off of her because I do not want her to have that orange color over top of her. And again, you can hit that key next to the bracket key, and the red part is where you have taken it off of her. Alright, so that's pretty much all you need to do for the sunlight layer. I do recommend turning it off and on just so you can kind of see what it's done to make sure you like it, and then you can adjust the opacity down if you want to. So I kind of like it right there, and I'm going to flatten that. Okay, I don't think most people need this, and I don't really use it that often, but I'm going to include it for you guys, is a teeth whitening action. Let me find that in here. Brighten that smile. Push play on that and it'll tell you what you need to do. Use a white brush, paint over the teeth on both black masks. You can adjust the opacity as needed for the desired results. So I have these masks right here. Bleach those pearly whites. You want a white brush at 100% opacity, and then I just kind of paint over what may be any sort of problem area for my client's teeth, and then I go to clean it up, and then that's really gonna brighten them a lot. So you can see what it did. It's nothing crazy. I'm not like a crazy editor, but you can adjust the opacity on these if you need. Usually the bleach you don't want to touch too much, but the clean it up you might want to. It just brightens them. Can you see that working? So it just kind of brightened her teeth a little bit. I might take it off of these front ones. You don't want like super white teeth because it looks fake, but sometimes you just kind of need to brighten them a little bit. So I would call that good, and then I would layer flatten image. Let's see. Okay, and she has a little bit of discoloration in her skin. I'm guessing because it was so cold outside, it was crazy. So I might fix some of this just so it's not so glaring. And I don't have an action for that, but I would just show you what I would do. I would come down here to this and I would click on the color balance right here. And I'm going to take some of the red out and just add some cyan. And it's going to adjust the whole image, which is fine because we have this layer mask here, and then you're going to hit Control-I, Command-I on a Mac, and then it's going to invert the mask. And so then I have a black mask and I want a white brush, and at 100% opacity, then I can come up here and kind of get rid of some of that red just so her skin tone matches a little bit better. And then you can still see, like right here is pretty white. So I would click on my backgrounds and I would do another color balance. And then I'm going to add some red back in. So you can see it's adjusting the whole image, but that's okay because I'm going to come down here and click Control-I. It's going to invert that mask. I'm going to take my white brush and paint right here. And it just kind of fixed that. So then you can see, I'm going to make a group just so you guys can see, but before it looked like this and now it looks like this. It's super subtle, but I feel like her skin isn't as blotchy looking. You see the difference? So it looked like that and now it looks like that. Super small adjustment, but I think it helped. So layer, flatten it, and I'm definitely a less is more editor. I don't really want to mess with people's skin, but I feel like there it just kind of helped a little bit. Alright, and there's another action in here for a skin smoother. She definitely does not need it, but I'm going to run it just so you guys can see what it does. And again, it's a light skin smoother, it's nothing crazy, and you can adjust the opacity. A lot of times I don't even run it on people, I like skin to look like skin, but it's in here. So it'll tell you exactly what to do. Click the black mask with a soft white brush at a lowered opacity, paint over skin to soften. You can also adjust the overall opacity of the layer to find the look you're going for. Okay, so it's a black mask. You're going to want to grab a white brush, and then you just paint on the skin. So it's at 100%, so it's pretty dramatic. I don't want her skin to look like a doll. So see, this is with it painted on, this is with it taken off. It really smoothed her skin out. So I would turn the opacity way down. And there, it just smoothed it just a little bit. And then layer flatten. Okay, I'm gonna zoom back out. So I'm really liking how this is looking so far. Normally I really like a dark background and then my subject to be the brightest thing in the image, but I think because this is a wintry photo, I kind of want to lighten around her. So I have a matte the edges light. I'm not a matte lover, I hate matte, but I feel like sometimes it really adds to your photo if you use it in the right way. So I'm going to run this. Okay, so it put just a little bit of brightness around the edges, and if you come down here to the layer mask, you can see where it's at. The white part is where it has applied the effect, and the black part is where it has not applied the effect. So I am going to use a black brush, and I want to make sure it's not on my subject. So I'm going to paint off of her because I do not want that light matte on her. But it looks like it needs a little bit more over here, so I'm going to use a white brush, and if you just hit X, it will toggle to the white brush, and I'm going to paint the effect on here because I want it to make sure it's in these places. Okay. So then I'm just going to use a black brush again at a super low opacity of 40%, and I'm just going to paint black around her just to make sure she doesn't have any of the white on her. So it looked like that, and now it looks like this. I think it definitely looks more like a wintry photo. I like it. So I'm going to flatten that, and I'm pretty sure I really like how this looks, and I don't want to do anything else to it. Except I do want to add some snow, and I want to show you guys how to do that. So I have this photo of snow. If you select it, you can drag it and then just drop it right over top of the image. It doesn't quite line up, so if you do Control T or Command T and just drag the edges to make sure it's covering the whole photo, hit the check mark, There, now she's covered in snow. And then what you're going to do is come down here to your layer panel, click on the snow layer, and then where the drop down is, you are going to click screen. And then, yay, now she has snow everywhere, pretty. However, I want to get rid of some of the snow that's on her face. And I also think there's too much on the background. It's kind of distracting. So I'm going to get rid of some of that as well. So if you take your spot healing brush, we've used that before, use that, and then zoom in, you can get rid of some of that. So I'm just going to click on some of these, the snow on her face. And I know this is super boring to watch people fix this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's super boring. I'm sorry. So bear with me. I'm going to go as fast as I possibly can because, yeah, it's boring. I definitely want to leave some of the snow on her so it doesn't look like she wasn't actually in the snow. But I'm going to take it off of her face because I think it's distracting. But I'll leave it in her hair, and then I'll leave some on her and just get rid of maybe some of it that's on her because it's a lot. I made this snow overlay and I put a lot of snow on there because it's easier, I think, to get rid of it than it is to add it if there's not enough. So that's where I'm at with that. Okay, so then there's too much, I think, in the background. I'm just going to get rid of some of these chunks because it is just too much, I think. And then that's totally your call. You might like it, but I think it's too much for me. Anyway, so I could hem and haw over this all day long, taking snow out, but you guys don't need to watch me take snow out. So I'm going to go ahead and just call this good. And then I would just, oh my gosh, here I am being annoying and getting rid of all this, but hit layer, flatten, and then I would just save it. So real quick, I'm going to show you what it looked like when we very first started, because it's kind of fun to see in your photos. So when we started, this is what we started with after we did our raw adjustments, and then this is what we ended with. So yay, that's kind of fun to see, beginning and end. I hope you guys liked watching that edit. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I will have all of these presets and actions for sale, and I will drop a link to where you can buy those. I also have a black and white conversion edit. I might hop on really quick and do a third video to show that to you, so hang tight with me. It will be a super short video, but this is going to conclude the Photoshop portion.